Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskrityam.
Narayanam Namaskrityam.
Naran Chaiva Narottamam.
Naran Chaiva
Jaiva
Narottamam.
Narottamam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Devim
Saraswatim
Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayat.
Tato Jayam
Jayamudira.
Udire.
Nashtaprayasu Abhadresu.
Nastaprayeshu Abhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata
Bhagavata
Sevaya.
Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttamasloke.
Bhagavati
Bhagavati
Uttamasloke.
Tamasloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati
Bhakti
Namastaki.
Nistiki.
Reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, title Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness, and the verse number is 15. Sarvendriya Gunabhasham
Sarvendriya Gunabhasham.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Asaktam Sarvavrihajaiva
Tam Sarva
Asaktam
Vrishchaiva.
Sarva
Nirgunam Gunabhaktacha
Nirgunam Gunabhotra.
Sarvendriya Gunabhasam
Sarvendriya Gunabhasham.
Sarvendriya Gunabhasham.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Sarvendriya
Asaktam Sarvavrihashaiva
Asaktam Sarva
Asaktam Sarva
Vrishchaiva.
Prahachaiva.
Nirgunam Gunabhaktasha.
Nirgunam
Nirgunam
Gunabhaktasha.
Gunabhotra.
Any Prabhuji or Mataji would like to lead?
Sarvendriya Gunabhasham.
Sarvendriya Gunabhasham
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam
Ashaktam Sarva Vrishchaiva.
Asaktam Sarvavrihashaiva
Nirgunam Guna Bhaktacha.
Nirgunam Gunabhaktacha. Word by word meaning. Sarva of all,
Sarva of all.
Indriya senses,
Indriya senses.
Guna of the qualities,
Guna of the qualities.
Abhasam,
Abhasam,
the original source,
the original source.
Sarva all,
Sarva all.
Indriya senses,
Indriya senses.
Vivarjitam,
Vivarjitam,
being without,
Being without.
Asaktam,
Saktam.
Asaktam,
without attachment,
Without attachment.
Sarva Brihat,
Sarva,
Sarva Brihat.
the maintainer of everyone,
the
The
maintainer
maintainer
of
of everyone.
Cha also,
Cha
Cha
also.
Eva certainly,
Eva
Eva
certainly.
certainly.
Nirgunam,
Nirgunam,
Nirgunam.
without material qualities,
Without
without
material
material
qualities.
qualities.
Guna Bhaktar,
Guna Bhokta,
Bhakta.
master of the Gunas,
master of
Master
the
of the
Gunas.
Guna.
Cha also.
Cha
Cha
also.
also.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Ja.
The Super Soul is the original source
The super soul is the original source
of all senses,
of all senses.
yet He is without senses.
Yet he is without senses.
He is unattached.
He is unattached.
Although He is the maintainer of all living beings,
Although he is the maintainer of all living beings,
He transcends the modes of nature
he transcends the modes of nature
And at the same time,
and at the same time,
he is the master of all modes of material nature.
he is the master of all the modes of material nature.
Any Prabhuji or Mataji would like to read this page?
The Supreme Lord, Bhagavad Gita 13:1, 13:15 purport. The Supreme Lord, although the source of all senses of living entities, doesn't have material senses like they have. Actually, the individual souls have spiritual senses, but in conditioned life, they are covered with material elements, and therefore the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental and therefore called nirguna. Guna means the material modes, but his senses are without material covering. It should be understood that his senses, all our sensory activities, he has his transcendental senses, which are uncontaminated. This is very nicely explained in the Shvetavashatara Upanishad 3:19. In the verse, Apani Pado Javano Grahita. The Supreme Personality God has no hands which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him. That is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the super soul. He has no material eyes, but he has eyes. Otherwise, how could he see?
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else would like to read this page?
He sees everything, past, present, future. He lives within the heart of the living being, and he knows what we have done in the past, what we are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. He knows everything, but no one knows him. It is said that Supreme Lord has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout space because he has spiritual legs. In other words, the Lord is not impersonal. He has his eyes, legs, hands, and everything else. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we also have these things. But his hands, eyes, legs, and senses are not contaminated by material nature.
Bhagavad Gita also confirms that when the Lord appears, he appears as he is by his internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy because he is the Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. Anyone else would like to read this page?
He has his eternal form called Satchidananda Vigraha. He is full of all opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. There are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his head, face, hands, or legs, he has them, and when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalists who are still materially affected cannot understand the personality of Godhead.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Let's all chant together the invocation prayers. Om Agyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasme Sri Gurave Namo Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Utapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamsha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhavitam हे कृष्ण कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कंचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमो। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नीलाचल निवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्र सुभद्राभ्यां जगन्नाथाय ते नमः। So thank you so much for joining this Sangha every Saturday evening, where we take the prominent verses from Bhagavad Gita. All verses are very, very powerful. Last time we ended with chapter 12, being the chapter 12 is named as devotional service. And we spoke a little bit about how to go about thinking about Krishna, then practicing ways to get close to Krishna, and then if we can't, then work for Krishna. And we went through four prominent verses about devotional service. That was chapter 12, and today we are talking about chapter 13. Chapter 13 is talking about nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. So what is nature? Nature is prakriti, right? And enjoyer is purusha, who is enjoying, and the conscious around it. So this is a very prominent chapter to understand who the supreme is. So there might be some technicalities in our discussion today, but this chapter gives a very profound understanding of Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead. So here Krishna is saying Sarvendriya Gunavhasam. Sarvendriya Gunavhasa means he is the source of all senses. So we have five senses, um, and each sense has a sense organ. So uh, we have senses by which we see things, smell things, hear things. But when we see with the intelligence which we possess. That means sometimes when you wear a goggles, you don't see the right thing. If the goggles is contaminated with soil, you don't see the right thing. So seeing, people say seeing is believing, but when you see with the right sense or the right consciousness, then you progress towards righteousness. But if you see with a contaminated vision, then a good thing will look not right to you. So Krishna is saying, Sarvendriya Gunavasham, then he is the source of all senses. But at the same time, he's saying, Sarvendriya Vivarjitam. That means he is devoid of material senses. So it's a very complicated thing. How can you be something and not be something? So this one and two, the first line and second line, are mutually contradictory. That's the reason why it's very easy to understand Krishna if you believe this, and it's very difficult to understand Krishna because if you doubt it, and that is exactly when you need, um, because we are all as spiritual seekers. We're trying to seek things as to who we are, where we came from, what is the relationship. But here, Krishna, in the first two lines, is kind of contradicting each other. He's saying he's the source of all senses, yet he's devoid of material sense. So we have to spend some time understanding this. And then Krishna says, Asaktam Sarva Brihashaiva. He is unattached, though he is in the maintainer of all. And Nirgunam Gunavaktasha. That means he is the master of modes. We have three modes of material nature, yet he is transcendental to them. That means we have mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. So these are the three modes. So Krishna is saying he's beyond these three modes. So there are three gunas and five senses. He's saying he's the source of all senses. He gives us the perception to see, hear, smell, but he is beyond this. At the same time, he's saying he's unattached, even if he's maintaining all of this, and he's the master of all modes, the three modes, sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, goodness, passion, ignorance. But he is beyond it. That means he's so another name for Krishna is called Trigunatit. Trigunatit means he is beyond these three modes of material nature. So let's try to understand a little bit more about this as to why Krishna is referred as Trigunatit. We'll take some pastimes. These pastimes are etched in our memory when we think about a philosophy. Often philosophy is very dry, and philosophies can lead into arguments because any philosopher with you, Socrates or Aristotle or any philosopher for that matter you take, there are arguments and counter arguments. So if we take some pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, these philosophies which are we are discussing, which are very life lessons philosophies, will be etched in our memory. So there is Saguna, that means a person who has good guna. Good guna means good qualities. Guna is qualities. And Durguna means he has bad qualities. Like, for example, waking up early in the morning is a Suguna. Um, Sleeping till 12 o'clock is a Durguna. So, but Krishna in this case is referred as Nirguna. Nirguna means he is beyond these two gunas, the good and the bad. And he is Trigunatit. He is actually beyond the three modes of material nature. So let's try to discuss a little bit closely as to. So in Swatara Upanishad, we discussed, Prabhuji read that apani padu javana grahita. That means Purusha in this context is the enjoyer, right? So Purusha means the person in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna confirms that Krishna is Purusham Saswatam. That means Krishna is Saswatam. He's spotless. He's he's the topmost Purusha, and we all are Prakriti. We are controlled by the Supreme. Supreme Personality of Godhead is not controlled by anybody. He is the most powerful Purna Purushottam Krishna, and here Arjuna in 10.12 is referring to Krishna as Purusham Saswatam. That means he is the spotless Purusha. He is the original Purusha, and thus Purusham Mahanta mentioned in the verse from Sutara Upanishad is Sri Krishna. His hands and legs are not mundane, but are completely transcendental. So sometimes our body is material. Once the soul leaves our body is useless. But Krishna, whether he is in this form, whether he is in a wooden form, whether he is a marble form, he is completely transcendental. And that's why Krishna says, Avajananti mam mudha manusim tanu ashritam. That means the fools deride him. The fools don't understand him. And only a transcendentalist who understand the Supreme in a very close sense from the scriptures can only recognize who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. And there he goes on to say it is not possible to understand Krishna because simply by studying Vedas. Just by reading Vedas, you cannot understand because Vedas also has philosophical connotations. So one must have the mercy of a devotee, yat padam. Unless one is favored by a devotee, he cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Arjuna also confirms that in Bhagavad Gita, my Lord, it's very difficult to understand your personality. The less intelligent class of men cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead without being favored by a devotee. So in our parampara, in our method of understanding the Supreme, it is very potent to get an association of devotees, so that when you get an association of devotees, you could recognize the various aspects of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how to perform devotional service, which is the prior chapter we went over. And when you undertake devotional service, this the modes of material nature, the subtle uh, body like man, buddhi, ahankar, mind, intelligence, false ego, get purified. Mind becomes focused on Krishna. Our intelligence become sharpened, and the ahankar, the ego goes away. So when you end up doing devotional service, and that's the reason why when you mix with a devotee, when you hear from a devotee, Srila Prabhupada, when he was going to United States, everybody started telling him that Srila Prabhupada, you're going to US. It's such a nice thing. You're going to foreign country. And at the time, going to foreign in 1965 was not very easy. So, and he created a wonderful movement, which we are reaping benefits of right now. But Srila Prabhupada said, I'm not going to US. Srila Prabhupada said, Srimad Bhagavatam is going to US, and I'm just carrying Srimad Bhagavatam to US. So, Srila Prabhupada in this context is a devotee. And when people came in contact with a devotee, a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, the hippies became happies. Everybody changed for good. There is benefit, and this entire collection of people who are totally immersed in sense gratification, recognized through this translations, which was only available in Sanskrit and some local language, the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he could just transform. So the connection with devotee is very significant, as mentioned in this. Then Krishna also goes on to say, Tadviti Pranipatina Pariprashna Sevaya Upadeshantike Jnanam Jnanina Tattvadarshana. So that means whenever you mingle with a devotee or a superior, because we have Gaurang Prabhu in our temple on Sunday evening. So Tadviti Pranipatena Pariprashnena Seva. Pariprashnena Seva means you have to ask in a humble way, in a servitorship way. So they like exactly like Arjun. Arjun was confused. He didn't want to fight. Then he started asking wonderful questions. And when he asked the questions, he asked the questions with a servitorship mindset. And when he asked that, he got the answers to the question. So association is the key, and asking the right question with a servitorship mentality, pariprashnena sevaya, pariprashna. So asking the question in a servitorship mentality is key to understanding Supreme. And if you follow these, you would understand Supreme Personality of Godhead much better. And there is explanation, and Mayavadis often tend to think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not a person, because they think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unreachable, unthinkable. So he's like a shunya. He's like a um, like a void. Voidism or shunyavadi is very prominent because they think Krishna doesn't have any akar. He doesn't have a hand. He doesn't have a leg. He doesn't have akar in the sense he is nirakar. And this you'll find it very commonly in other philosophies. But our philosophy is not about thinking Supreme Personality of Godhead as not having akar. He has many forms, he has several incarnations, and sometimes he comes as a boar, sometimes he comes as half lion, half man, and sometimes he comes as beautiful Trivangi, Shyam Sundar form, and sometimes he comes as beautiful Jagannath in the form of Chauka, where he is sitting beautifully, and also he comes as a devotee where he goes out on Sankirtan like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he comes in many forms. He has akar, he has um, beautiful blue bodied, uh, the most beautiful person in the whole world, and he has a liking for certain bhoga. He has friends, he has pastimes. He is a person by himself, and here in this discussion we are seeing Mayavadis, they do not think that Krishna is a person, and Krishna doesn't have energies. So as Krishna is not a person, the basic fundamental of understanding the Supreme, that he is a supreme person, he is a supreme personality of Godhead, is is contradicted. So Krishna is a supreme person, and we have to recognize Krishna is a supreme person, and not to go and think that there is some Nirakarvadi who is telling us that Krishna doesn't have any form. So there are some pastimes. So what happened once upon a time? Gopis wanted to meet Durvasa Muni, who was in the other side of the bank of Yamuna, and gopis, because they wanted to get good husbands, and they wanted to get some pious credits, so they came to Krishna and said, and at the time Yamuna was brimming with flood, so the level was very high, and the gopis wanted to meet Durvasa Muni, and Durvasa Muni is a very he's an angry saint, but he's actually a very potent and very lovable saint. So there was someone who was on the other side of Yamuna, and when gopis wanted to meet Durvasa Muni, the Yamuna was flooded. So they asked for help as to how they can go about meeting Durvasa Muni. So they came to Krishna. So Krishna said, uh, gopis, you go and tell Yamuna that uh, Krishna is a Nitya Brahmachari. And if the statement is true, then Yamuna will let you in. That means Yamuna will pave your way, and you can go to the other side and meet Durvasa Muni. And gopis were confused because Krishna, as far as gopis are concerned, used to play with gopis, used to steal clothes of gopis. So how can Krishna be a Nitya Brahmachari when he is undertaking such activities? So gopis were very confused. But anyway, gopis took the word and went to Yamuna and asked Yamuna to pave the way. And they said, Krishna, who is a Nitya Brahmachari, asked us to seek help from you and let us in to the other side of Yamuna because we want to meet the saint in the other side. And Yamuna opened the path, and gopis were all confused. But however, it turned out to be true that the gopis went to the other side, and Durvasa Muni asked, and they gave a lot of offerings to Durvasa Muni on the other side. Durvasa Muni said, how come this is brimming with water, Yamuna is brimming with water, how come you could come this side? Then then the gopis said, Munivar, we told Yamuna, because everything is a person. Yamuna, in this case, is a river, but is actually a person. There's a Yamuna Devi who is offered obeisances and bhoga. If you go to Vrindavan, on the banks of Yamuna, there's a temple of Yamuna Devi. So coming back to this pastime, so the gopis said, Munivar, we told Yamuna that Krishna is a Nitya Brahmachari, and then Yamuna let us in. So Durvasa Muni said, okay, I understand. So on the way back, uh, Durvasa Muni was very happy receiving gopis and the offerings from gopis. He had a nice prasadam which gopi has taken and to fulfill all the desires of gopis. On the way back, um, Durvasa Muni asked, rather, how are you going to go? Then, because the Yamuna is full. Then Gopi said, Munivar, how can you go? Because the Yamuna is full. And Durvasa Muni said, you go and tell Yamuna that Durvasa Muni is the Nitya Upavasi and Yamuna will let you in. And now gopis are once again confused. You might have seen, you might have heard the pastime of the the pastime where Draupadi Maharani was offering something, and Durvasa Muni and they didn't had anything because they had already ended the prasadam for that day, and Durvasa Muni Durvasa Muni came in, and then then there is this beautiful pastime. So whenever there is a need for somebody to consume prasadam, Durvasa Muni is always there. But here, on the contrary, Durvasa Muni is telling the gopis that go and tell Yamuna that Durvasa Muni, the Nitya Upavasi, has come. Let me in. And so gopis were confused. So anyway, they said that Durvasa Muni, the Nitya Upavasi, has told us to let us in, Yamuna Devi. So please let us in. So Yamuna let them in. So they were also confused. Anyway, so they came to this side. So the moral of the story is Durvasa Muni, even if he is taking a lot of offering, he is taking with the intent to please the devotees. But in the midst of his consciousness, he is always a upavasi. He's always fasting. He's always thinking about the Supreme. So his physical eating is not related in any way to his pious credits of staying. So there are certain people who will be in this in a get together where there will be a lot of noise, but they will be calm because they're not attached to the music or the prajalpa, and they will be very calm and they will devoid themselves of uh, bad association. So they are not attached. Likewise, Durvasa Muni is not attached to the food particles which is given. Rather, he is taking them as a offering because he is a senior sannyasi and he has to please the devotees. Likewise, Krishna, who plays with gopis, who plays and steal their clothes, and he has got 18,108 queens, is referred as Nitya Brahmachari. That means, so when you think about who is Bhagavan, of the 6 characteristics, he has to be Dhanavan, Rupavan, uh, Vidwan, and so many 5 characteristics. The 6th characteristics is renunciation. When you have all these 5 qualities of a Bhagavan, you cannot renunciate. But Krishna can renunciate everything. So these modes which are basically attracting all of us, when you become a Bidwan, you have ego. When you have Dhanavan, you have ego. When you have Balavan, you have ego. But the 6th quality of Bhagavan, which we have already spoken, is renunciation, the greatest renunciator. So Krishna, even if he is with the queens, he is a brahmachari. Even if he is with gopis, he is a brahmachari. That's the reason why Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. As in Puranas, the definition of Bhagavan is mentioned so beautifully, one who possesses the 6 characteristics. So, as you can see, Krishna is the source of all the modes, source of all the senses, but he's not attached to the senses. And this pastime you'll hear in a little bit variant form in from various speakers, but the context is Krishna, even if he's doing the pastime, He is pleasing the devotees. He is playing with gopis. He doesn't have the wrong senses like we see in this material world. In this material world, when you open a newspaper, the newspaper is filled with sense gratification crimes. The sense gratification crimes are such that you can never think of the extent of crime which is happening in India or in United States, and it's all stemming from sense gratification. And somebody is trying to topple somebody else in this rat race of trying to be powerful, but they don't understand that they're getting too much into this sense gratificatory process, and Krishna, who is the controller of everyone, is actually devoid of senses. The senses cannot catch him. That's why he is called Trigunatit. And when you think about, that's the reason why Krishna is often very mistaken. You know, in your college WhatsApp groups, you'll find a lot of references to Krishna as somebody who is mixing uh, with girls, mixing with queens. But in order to understand physics, you have to go to a physics professor. In order to understand maths, you have to go to a maths professor. In order to understand Krishna, you have to go to somebody who has read the scriptures and who can present Krishna the way Krishna is, not in somebody's mindset, not in somebody's mental concoction, and um, present Krishna. So I hope this example gels with the philosophy we talked about. The Krishna is untouched. There is this nature, and we talked about the energies of Krishna earlier, the internal energy, Antaranga Sakti, external energy, Bahiranga Sakti, and marginal energy, the Tatastha Sakti, and how Krishna's energies are playing. This is and Krishna through Sarga in Canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam has said he has created this beautiful universe, this nature, and he is the enjoyer, who is the Purusha, Param Purusha, and the consciousness around it. So in chapter 13, this is probably the only verse we're going to touch because um, because this is a subtle topic which is not talked about a lot. And next time we will move on to chapter 14 because there are more prominent verses coming up to be discussed in Bhagavad Gita discussion forum on Saturday evenings. So I think I can go on and on, but I just want to give one example. So sometimes we think that we have immense knowledge, and this knowledge is based on certain scientific principles because everything is seeing is believing. So there's a insect, if I may, and the insect is beetle. Okay, so based on the aeronautical engineering in terms of the force, the draft, um, and the body shape, the mass and aerodynamics, aeronautical engineers have claimed that beetle, this which you see here, cannot fly. Technically, if you have these attributes, you just can't fly. But beetle doesn't know that aeronautical engineers have proclaimed this. And beetle can fly. So the thing is, sometimes science can recognize something based on equations, based on theories, based on strong statistical analysis. But there is something beyond science, the so-called science, not spiritual science, the so-called science. And that is the power of soul, which has been given to a given individual, whether it's an insect or a person, through this process from the Supreme. And likewise, I mean, I have this example when most of the time when you hold a cricket bat, you hold your right hand near the bat and the left hand near the edge of the handle. In my school, there used to be a person who is so naturally gifted that he used to hold the bat right-handed grip like this, the other way. And he used to be a pure natural hitter of the ball. And he used to score heavily. So he didn't know that cricket has to be played in this way. Like Beetle doesn't know that he's supposed to not fly from a scientific way, but Beetle does fly and he flies well. And likewise, when scientists could not break the atom further, they named it as God particle. So what you see in this world, right? Seeing is believing and this and that, it's purely based on scientific proof. And these scientists are not 100% knowledgeable. They are not God. They don't know everything. They know certain little area and they have PhDs, patents, and so on. But when it comes to the inner workings of this entire universe, the cosmic manifestation, and how all these 8.4 million species interact with each other, they don't know. And that is exactly where we have to resort to someone. I mean, even if you go to doctors, they will tell you so many things. And for a moment, you'll think that doctor is God. But after some time, when the end is getting near, they themselves will come and tell you in a very sad way that we are not God and we have to give up the process of expecting that someone will live forever and the end has to come. And doctors agree that the life or the amount of life a person has to spend in this universe is not determined by them, but someone beyond them who is a super doctor. So the intent of this discussion is in nature, there are so many unraveled mysteries which we cannot rationalize through science. And the only way we could recognize the natural causes is to resort to scriptures, and scriptures have a beautiful answer to everything possible, which is not even found by the science. And there is this beautiful example, we can talk a little bit later, but I'd like to end here. Just wanted to mention that in this process of understanding the Supreme, we should recognize that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the enjoyer or the Param Purusha in this context. And we should make every attempt because he has created this universe. We are neither paying any taxes, we are neither paying anything. So, so do whatever you can to please, uh, whether if you think you want to do charity, whether you want to do, but understanding him is more important than anything else. So I'd like to end here. If you have any question, comments, um, you can mention. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Anybody has any comments, thoughts, comments, reflections about this verse? We discussed 13.15 today, which is a very profound verse. Krishna is saying, I am the creator of the senses, but I am not within it. So he's Trigunatit. He is beyond all the three modes and he is beyond the senses. We discussed a beautiful pastime where he is a Nitya Brahmachari, even if he's playing with gopis, which clearly exemplifies the fact that Krishna is beyond it. And we cannot understand Krishna by giving him character names, which many people do in various different WhatsApp groups and wherever. Because of that, they have to uh, read the scriptures to ascertain what they're saying. So we gave some examples of beetles, God particle, natural propensity, which is beyond the thought process of human creation. And we have some members who can chime in with your reflections. You can unmute and speak.
Hello.
Yes, Prabhuji, go ahead.
Prabhuji, thank you for the class, Prabhuji. And the beetle example was a very good example of getting the point across that scientists, though it seems like we know a lot, there is a lot more that we don't know. And not everything can be proven by science. And the beetle example was a very precise example of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your thoughts. Appreciate it. Any other thoughts? Yes, beetle, and there are countless. I mean, we just had in our this thing. We just had a cat which gave birth to 4 kittens in our home in India, and when the kittens are born, they're very small. They're like this small, and this cat had 4 kittens. And I was just talking to my mom that after 3-4 days, the kittens are let go in a safe place. But there are times when the animalistic propensity of some male cat or some other cat becomes so cruel that they eat their own kids after giving birth. And I was very shocked. How can a dad or somebody who of the same species give birth and the same species can eat up? So the animalistic tendencies are very profound, and the kind of news you see are all animalistic propensities. So it is very important that we have got this beautiful life of a human being and we should make most of it in this life. So just wanted to add that. Any other thoughts from anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dhanavad Pranam.
Krishna.
All very, very. I also want to second Prabhuji. The beetle example was very. It's very counterintuitive, right, Prabhuji? Like I was also, I never thought until you gave this example that the shape is not aerodynamic, because to fly it has to be, the knowledge what we have is that it has to be aerodynamic, but the shape is not aerodynamic, Prabhuji. So it's very counterintuitive. We cannot understand. There are things which we cannot understand with our limited senses, right? So what is our, as you have rightly told, the approach to our understanding is basically through Guru, Shastra, and Sangha, right? The tripod way to understand the things. Scriptures are there, but the scriptures cannot be, we may misinterpret the scriptures also, right? So that's why we take the help of Guru and the Sangha, basically the association, like. So what we understand is that since our senses are limited, we have to take these, which otherwise is as Prabhupada gives the example of the frog always, Prabhuji. That's a very classic example of our knowledge and how limited we are, right? So as we, I'm just reiterating it. If somebody goes and tells to a frog who lives in a well that there is an Atlantic Ocean which is huge, humongous, so many miles wide and so much deep, his senses are, since he has not seen or he cannot perceive it, he will say um, this is a something like fictitious, right? But we all know that there is an ocean which exists, because we are little, our senses are little elevated than the frog, right? We are atit, as you have been telling, transcendental. We are above that knowledge. So there are levels of um, there are levels. We have to be above those to transcend. So similarly, God is, even in human beings, there are atheists, there are theists, there are Mayavadis, right? There are many. So who has the correct understanding is basically who has elevated himself. What is the elevation? His consciousness has to be elevated to, then the Krishna reveals to him Prabhuji. So that's how, even with the Guru Shastra and Sangha and the mercy, we have to elevate ourselves, and then we will know Atit, as you have rightly told Prabhuji. We have to be transcendental to these modes to get a higher knowledge. Just wanted to second your thoughts, Prabhuji. Good examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you um, for sharing that we have to gradually uh, practice to transcend, so that we can see things, what our Guru tells us, what Shastra tells us, or what Sadhu tells us. So we have to transcend. And the purpose, we could choose to go to Friday potlucks, picnics, Saturdays, but if we transcend, then we can understand the higher purpose of life. If we don't transcend, it will be like living like an animal, even if you are in a human birth. So thank you for sharing. We all should attempt to transcend and understand the core principles as to who we are and where we came from. So attending the Saturday BV is very important, as we share our views and discuss what Krishna said, and put some tenets into our heart for our betterment. Thank you, bro. Any
And
other
also,
thoughts?
Prabhuji, as we, like, for example, if we want to have a aerial view of a city, right, Prabhuji, aerial view of a city, the higher we go, we get the aerial view. Otherwise, if we stand at a point, we only know the point around us, or to the extent our eyes can see. But are we here from the atlas, or from the local geographical maps? We only can know, but if we really want to see, we have to transcend, we have to elevate ourselves and see it, Prabhuji. So similarly, Krishna is in this verse. I think Krishna is trying. We are trying to know that, to understand who is Krishna is basically when we transcend these guna, right? The three things, Prabhuji, which they have mentioned in this verse, when we transcend, then we will understand Krishna, who is Krishna. Otherwise, we will be contemplating within the realms of this, our brain only.
True, true. And that as we go up, a city which looks so filthy sometimes can look beautiful with electric lighting views. So definitely, once we elevate, we look at higher principles, we have hope that we can grow as an individual. Thank you for that example as well. Any other comments? Any other thoughts? You all can speak about how this verse is impacting you, or is is making you think uh, about your relationship with the Supreme, or understanding of the Supreme. You all can chime in. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare
Or
Krishna
Mataji.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam, yeah. Nice class, Prabhuji, like a lot of good examples that you have given. Yeah, so actually I was listening like one of the classes from Nitya Sevani Mataji classes, like he was talking about the Ajamil also. The recently I heard one of the classes of her, and he was saying that how like bad association is how is impacting how it impacted for Ajamil, right? Like small bad associations, he was a great devotee and he was doing a lot of good things, but he did a small wrong thing with that actually he whole life got right. So that's why the association is something, Prabhuji, is I feel like it's very much important. Okay, if you don't have good association, right, but still actually in his life he worship Krishna, right? That's why actually the Dutas came right during the year. So the example was very good, and also I see like how Prabhupada got inspired with these people, right? Because US people, they don't know anything who is Krishna, and right, they don't have any idea, because it's very difficult to convince, like in my family, right? Because I'm not like that level, like I'm very very small, but still it's very very difficult to convince our family members or someone, right? Like because they are so much diversified, they basically they don't believe. Okay, but how like Prabhupada, like inspired with those people who don't have any idea like what is God and who is Krishna, right? So only through the Mahamantra, Prabhuji. So Mahamantra is that powerful. Okay, so he, through Mahamantra only they, they realize. Prabhuji, like when I was actually eating onion and garlic before, but after when I, started chanting regularly, right? So one time I had, after that I vomited immediately, Prabhuji. I don't know, like, what was the power, like, uh, so sometimes I feel like, this is something about the Mahamantra only, okay, which I'm chanting, which, so I think that Mahamantra only, due to Mahamantra only, this English people, right? So they actually, they were taking drugs, alcohol, and everything, right? Due to that power only, they, they're not even eating onion garlic also.
Very, very true. Thank you, Prabhu. True examples. Um, you mentioned about Jamil. It's so true that sometimes we don't take it seriously. The association is the main thing. The Krishna consciousness process starts with ABCD. A starts with association, and without a right association, we cannot progress. On the aspect of you give a very practical example as to why in a family which is etched in very strong beliefs, why they cannot take to Krishna consciousness. See, you can only start to know when you recognize how much you don't know. Uh, Once you recognize that you don't know, then only you can know. In various different parts in South India, East India, West India is more acceptable, I would say. There is a plenty of philosophy which is already there. Um, they have very strong, um, they have very strong philosophies, very strong religious understanding. They are too much into karma kanda, in the sense there is a lot of pujas, there is a lot of pujas which gives us benefit, the kind of pujas which is not karma yoga, it's actually karma kanda. So when they are filled with that knowledge, they don't know how much they don't know. When you don't know how much you don't know, you can't start acquiring knowledge, because and Srila Prabhupada, uh, America was in tatters after Vietnam War, and there's um, a lot of disunity, and when and they were ready to receive. So when water can when you have a gradient slope, water can flow. As the gradient slope is less and less, the flow is less and less. So likewise, the uh, in 1965-66, the power of Mahamantra is definitely there. The power of a uh, pure soul like Srila Prabhupada is there. And also, the two things, the third thing is definitely a power to receive has to be there as well. So in your homes, you mentioned, which is also true, many people follow that. They will not listen to you because they have deep rooted karma kanda knowledge. And in order to really get them back into Krishna consciousness. We have to pray. We have to be good human beings in front of them. And also, one practical example, which His Holiness Bhakti Purushottam Swami Maharaj told me, is they will not listen to you, but if you let some other senior Krishna consciousness person come do kirtan, do Bhagavad Gita recital, Bhagavad Gita discussion, they do change. So don't lose hope, Prabhu. Keep trying with your behavior, with your chanting, praying for them. But at the same time, whenever you go home, you try to do a home program, invite some, ISKCON brahmacharis and coincidentally, we are having a program today in our house in India, where 3 or 4 brahmacharis are coming and around 15-20 people from our family are coming. Let's see how the reception is. But the point is, you just have to keep trying and don't lose hope. You're not alone, because the families in India are deep rooted with a different kind of philosophy. But when we see the purest form of spiritual science is what is given by Srila Prabhupada, which they have not, it will take some time because they have not seen the power of spiritual science. Srila Prabhupada has relayed to us. Okay, bro?
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one more thing, like the Kartik month starts from tomorrow or maybe day after tomorrow, Prabhuji, Monday or Sunday?
Yeah, see, the technically you can say, but in our temple we're going to have Deep Dan, the lamp offering of the lamp, on from Sunday onwards. So the Deep Dan in ISKCON temples will start from Sunday onwards, which is tomorrow.
So our brother then the Kartik, right? So it will be from Monday then, right? Or from tomorrow only?
Many people do it from Sharat Purnima, Prabhu, which is tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone else? If there is none, we can end here. Tomorrow we have a wonderful speaker, Gauranga Prabhu, who is going to speak in our temple during the Sunday Feast program. Please join. And as we have more festivals, I'll post it in our Bhakti Vriksha WhatsApp group. Okay. If there's none, we can end here with our pranam mantra to all the Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpa tarubhascha kripa sindhu vayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavavyo namo namo. Vaishnavavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita Mahagranth ki jai.